Welcome to Healing Echoes, Rebuilding Life After Trauma and Abuse. Dr. Mical Baez graduated from Our Lady of Fatima University in Manila, Philippines in 2016 with her medical doctorate. After 5 months of marriage, she became pregnant with her first child. Then her life took an unexpected turn due to the COVID-19 pandemic. She had been working hard towards pursuing her residency program when the pandemic hit. However, with hospitals overwhelmed and the threat of the virus looming during pregnancy, she realized that the path she was on was no longer feasible. She decided to take a different approach with her passion in health and began exploring the holistic side of medicine. She began researching alternative modes of healing and started incorporating them into her daily routine. With time, she found that these methods not only improved her physical health, but also her mental and emotional well-being. Mical's decision to take a more holistic approach was not an easy one, but it has proved to be a fulfilling journey. She is now on a mission to educate others on the benefits of holistic healing and became a certified nutrition coach. With her motivation to empower others to take full control of their health, she diligently partnered with her husband Chris to form Iron Sharpens Iron Fitness. Mical's story is an excellent example of how sometimes taking an unexpected turn can lead us to discover new passions and purposes in life. By embracing change and being open to new possibilities, we can find fulfillment in ways that we never imagined before. Hello.
Hi, it's great to be here.
I'm so glad that you're on and so thankful that you're coming to share your personal story and your journey. It's very exciting.
Thank you.
So I would just like to start the conversation with you sharing some of your personal journey. What led you? I know we had talked about some suicidal thoughts and postpartum depression. So I'd like you to kind of start talking about that.
Sure. So as you mentioned earlier, I'm a doctor, and COVID threw me in for a loop, as well as the rest of the world.
Mm-hmm.
And because of my career change, that was a risk for depression, because that was who I was. My
Mm-hmm.
identity laid in that. My career was all about who I was. And I got pregnant during that time.
Mm-hmm.
So on top of that, I had a lot of fear and anxiety about what's going to happen if I caught COVID, or even my pregnancy, because a lot of things shut down. I was doing everything on my own. I didn't have the full support as everybody had pre-COVID. So that increased my risk all the more for depression. I had signs of it during pregnancy.
Mm-hmm.
I had a lot of anxiety, but it didn't come into fruition until post-pregnancy, where I had delivered my baby, and then my postpartum depression was just getting worse every single day. 3 months afterwards, I had attempted suicide. I had a 40-hour delivery with an emergency C-section. And unfortunately, I felt the detachment from my baby, and none of the doctors were really taking that into priority.
Mm-hmm.
I had voiced it out, but I felt like it wasn't seen. I felt like I wasn't seen or heard, really. And
Mm-hmm.
so I was given pain medication because of my C-section, and I overdosed on that. And I was hospitalized at Tampa General Hospital for a little bit until I was then transferred to a mental hospital, Tampa Community Hospital here.
Mm-hmm.
And I was Baker acted pretty much.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a really tough time because I did not understand how to love my baby, and why it was happening, because all my friends who were moms, they just showed how much love and connection they have with their child. And
Right.
with me, it's like, this is not making any sense. So
Right.
I struggled with that a lot. And that's basically where I was in 2021.
Yeah. Yeah. So not only feeling the detachment, but not really understanding why you were feeling the detachment. I can only imagine the challenge. And I know me and you have spoken before about how it's just not talked about enough. It's actually way more common than people realize. But I think because it's not talked about as much, it kind of does leave mothers who are experiencing it feeling so lost and alone, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm.
So what were the pivotal moments that started your path to recovery? I know you just said you were Baker acted. So was it being in the mental hospital that helped, or was there something else that kind of started you on that journey?
So I had a really, I guess you would say, a great awakening when I had taken all of the pills. I think I took 120 pills because it was a mixture of 3 bottles.
Mhm.
One was opioids, and then, which is controlled medication, but I believe I took up to 120 um, sertraline medications. And so the great awakening that I had just myself was when I was in the hospital at TGH and ER.
Mhm.
And my biggest fear, because I was ready to go, but then my biggest fear was I'm never going to see my daughter grow old,
Mhm.
and I'm never going to actually be the mom that I thought I wanted, or I had wanted to be.
Mhm.
And so I remember screaming in the ER, like, I actually don't want to die.
Mhm.
And that's when I started feeling my heart rate was going crazy. Because of the 2 medications, they do two different things. It
Mhm.
actually was for my benefit. So it actually helped me that I didn't overdose so much on the opioids, but the sertraline had contraindicated or was going against the opioid medication.
Mhm.
So I remember just thinking, what am I doing to myself? So my path for healing started when I realized what I had done at that moment. Now I couldn't go home. I couldn't do anything. It was
Right.
like Baker acted. And when I got to the mental hospital, I knew that I stood apart because a lot of people there, they had other issues. They had a lot of, different issues.
Mhm.
But there was a nurse that came up to me and she said, this is actually common with postpartum. And I'm like, I've never seen this occur personally. She said, don't worry, you're not the only one. And that actually gave me comfort. So that
Mhm.
was another part of my healing. Like, I'm not alone and I'm not actually all that messed up in the head.
You're right. And sometimes knowing that we're not the only ones is comforting in a sense. Yeah.
So
Uh.
it started there.
Mhm. Um. I do think, like, obviously, she said, like, you're not the only one. This is way more common than you think. I think people that do go through it, because we know it's not uncommon, um, they keep it hush hush. They're ashamed of it. Their family's ashamed of it, and so even though they did go through it, they don't tell anybody. So I think that's why we don't hear about it. Now, I do have a question. It is personal.
Go ahead.
You said the 2 medications like counteracted each other.
Hmm.
And I do not doubt in the moment that you did want out, you were depressed, and
Hmm.
therefore suicidal. But do you think your medical knowledge in some way knew that they would counteract each other, or was it just a fluke?
It was that moment where I just wanted out immediately.
Gotcha.
And all that I had was just whatever I had that moment.
Right, you're just gonna take
And
what was on
I
hand.
just took whatever it was. And
Gotcha.
luckily, that's what had happened.
Yeah, that's
And
a
so,
blessing.
yeah. But prior to that, I was holding a knife.
Yeah.
And so that I was like I was cooking. And
Mhm.
so I could have done that.
Right.
But when I snapped, because when you are in that point of postpartum depression and you just don't know where to go, you just,
Mhm.
at that moment, whatever you have, that's it.
Yeah, whatever's
And,
on hand.
and it just happened to be that.
Okay. Yeah, I was just curious, especially with your medical knowledge, if maybe there was something in there.
That's a
um,
good question. I actually thought I had more of the opioid pills.
uh, you're
And the
like,
last Yeah, and the last thing is I took the last bottle next to my daughter in the car. It
mhm.
was just me and her, and I held her hand. I said, "I'm so sorry, but you deserve a better mom."
Yeah,
And I thought that was it. I thought that's what was going to
yeah,
take me. But again, I'm just grateful that it wasn't the case.
yeah, that it didn't. And then that realization, being hospitalized and realizing I don't want to go, I think is also very common. Unfortunately, not everyone makes it back.
Hmm.
I know I've been there as well when I attempted and then realized I don't actually want out. especially when it came to my children. A lot of times in that moment, even though the depression makes us think that they would be better off without us, when we get to that point, then it's like, even if they would, I need them. I want to be here for them. So I'm
Right.
so thankful that your attempt was not successful. Many people find it difficult to talk openly about experiences with depression, but especially with suicide. What leads you to being able to speak about it? And then what advice would you give other people that want to talk but are scared to?
What leads me to be open about it is because there's a lot of people that are struggling, and they need to hear that other people are in the same situation and they're not alone. Just like that nurse that came up to me very lovingly and said, "You're not the only one." That made me feel like I have permission to talk about this. So, one, I want to help others. So that's why I'm open about doing this. And then two, my advice is find a safe, trusted person that you won't feel the judgment, you won't feel any sort of shame, but they're willing to talk through with you. And it could be a therapist. I went through therapy right after I got out of the hospital.
Mhm.
My husband and I worked through this. I mean, we also had separate people outside of our marriage to talk to. So that was another great outlet and
Yeah.
resource. Um, and then start working on yourself. So I started working on my nutrition. I started exercising, just the basics that we all hear about, but we
Mhm.
don't actually apply. So I took out a lot of refined sugar. I started to just walk outside 5-10 minutes a day to get sunlight, because
Mhm.
depression puts you in a state of isolation and you need vitamin D. You need to go outside. And so you kind of have to force yourself. Sometimes it's hard, but it's the things that are hard are the things that you need to do.
Yeah, they're worth it. Just starting, like you said, even if it was just going outside, even if it's sitting on your porch for 5 minutes, getting that sunlight makes a huge
Mhm.
difference. And then slowly you'll be able to start making it more.
Mhm.
Um, so how has your experience shaped your perspective on mental health, both personally and in your advocacy efforts?
I think when I was in medical school, it wasn't touched on so much. I mean, we go through psychiatry and then it's kind of like, okay, we talk a lot about like schizophrenia, a lot of about different things, but postpartum depression itself wasn't talked about a lot. And mental health was actually at that time taboo. In my culture, it was taboo in the Philippines. And then here in America, it's like we heard about it, but there wasn't a lot of advocacy.
Yeah.
Now it's super important to say, hey, this is a real thing. People go through it, but there's hope.
Right.
And I feel like the journey now is a lot better for a lot of people. And there should be more open spaces for people to say, I need to be in that space for me to actually unpack this, because I don't want to go down the route where other people like myself have gone.
Mhm.
So self-awareness is key. And if you are feeling something and you're kind of like, you would say, I'm not feeling myself, then do something about it. Don't
Yeah.
let it linger.
Yeah. So you would say that society and sometimes even cultures definitely can play a big role in the lack of resources and or people
For
speaking up.
sure. Yes. Being an Asian, sometimes it's difficult to open up that way because culturally you don't talk about that.
Right.
And I was afraid to talk about it. So unfortunately it brought me to that position.
Yeah. I have heard that, but obviously being who I am, I've never experienced it firsthand. So it was something that I definitely wanted to ask about. Are there any specific organizations that you're involved with to raise awareness?
So anything that Well, so the organizations that I am aware that I am a part of, it's mostly for my church, but
Mhm.
there's nothing outside of that that is raising awareness itself, other than things that I'm related to at my church. We do a lot of life coaching, and
Mhm.
so part of that is we help people who want to start having mindset shifts, wants to start working on things little by little. We coach them to look forward.
Right.
So we do that through the navigators.
Yeah, that way they're not getting stuck in that feeling. Like you said, if you're not feeling yourself, even if it's just that feeling, you're not getting stuck in it. You're moving forward. I think
Yeah,
that's very important.
ruminate. Mhm.
Yeah. And then that's just only going to make it worse.
Mhm.
As a survivor, what encouragement would you like to share to anyone who might be struggling, whether it be with postpartum, trauma, and or suicidal thoughts,
Wow.
or all of it?
Yeah, because I mean, when I went to therapy, I didn't know that I had so much. The thing is, The Body Keeps a Score is a great book, and I
Mhm.
think everybody should read that. And if you've had childhood trauma like myself, which was another risk for postpartum depression, your body understands and it locks up and it does not know how to release the anxiety. And physiologically, your body will continue to respond. But the biggest key, I think, for those that are listening is one, be willing to go and seek help and don't go at it alone. Don't think of reading a book or, just breathing exercises. Those help. Not to
Mhm.
say that those don't, but you need to walk through it with someone who is capable of understanding you. And I would have to advocate a therapist, a cognitive behavioral therapist,
Mhm.
someone that has gone through this with many other people. And also it's going back to the basics of what I mentioned. The steps that I took was going out, just taking a walk, removing yourself from things that are triggering to you, being proactive and creating boundaries that need to be created and set in place.
Mhm.
Um, Understanding that this isn't going to be an overnight journey.
Right.
This will take time, and that's okay.
Mhm. Yeah, I was gonna ask, like what role support systems played in your journey, and if how important you think they are, but you kind of answered that without me having to ask it, which is great. So instead I'll ask your career path. I know I had mentioned you going into business with your husband. What exactly do you guys do? Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so I took my medical doctorate degree and I started educating my husband's online personal clients. So he's a personal trainer. So he started that during the pandemic online, right? Gyms closed. So what I did was I partnered with him and just started educating people about the disease and how exercise plays a role in alleviating chronic illnesses. And then I took my knowledge with pharmacology and started helping them understand why they have the medication. And then I decided, well, you know what, this isn't enough. So I took nutrition, got certified in nutrition coaching, now functional nutritionist, and then started to not only educate, but now provide them more help and guidance with nutrition itself. And again, that helps with depression because what we eat plays a huge role with how we are going to function.
Right. So you're kind of showing them how it's the bigger picture, how everything is kind of connected.
We're a system. Our
Yeah.
body is a huge system.
That's beautiful. I know one of my recent interviews, we were discussing the same thing, how I think we're really starting to educate ourselves at this point and realize that it's all connected. And in order to better one thing, we have to work on all of them.
Right.
So I think that's great that you guys have done that with your business. Is there anything just overall that you want to share, or any words of encouragement that you'd like to share?
So being a new mom, well, technically not really new now. My daughter is 2, going on 3 in December. But regarding postpartum depression itself, if you are a new mom and if you just take an assessment of where you are and where you were in the past, if there's any sort of red flags that have happened, maybe you had trauma in the past in your childhood, growing up, maybe as a young adult, or even if you are in your mid 30s and you're feeling like, you just had a career change like myself, or you had moved someplace else and you're feeling alone, don't take those very lightly. Take it seriously and start to really be open about finding someone, connecting with someone, and don't wait to the last minute. Because postpartum depression, it is real. It's different from baby blues, is what they say.
Mm-hmm.
And I really don't like that term.
Yeah.
I think it's a misconception. So but I do want to tell you that I don't want to be a Debbie Downer, but it's real
Mm-hmm.
and it's not uncommon. So just don't feel like you're in this alone and don't feel like super mom.
Yeah.
You are a new mom, or if you have other kids already, don't feel like super mom. ask for help.
Yeah, that it's not wrong to do that. I think that's beautiful. I did want to share, just for our listeners, that when you reached out to me that you wanted to share, especially specifically about postpartum depression, because it's a form of depression most people don't talk about. You didn't even know that I also dealt with
Mm,
postpartum depression, especially with my youngest. And with my youngest, it led also to a point of suicide and self-harm. So I
mm,
think that in and of itself kind of shows that it's a lot more common than people realize.
mm. And I think I do want to add there that
Mhm.
for a time, I did feel the detachment with my daughter. But remember as well, you just went through a traumatic event, which is called delivery. And
Mhm.
so your body also needs to catch up.
Yeah.
And some people catch up faster. That's why they call it the baby blues. But it takes a lot of working through as well. But if you have the risk and the trauma, you have to work through the muddy part to get
Yeah.
through to the other side. And when I did do that, I found that my love for my daughter has always been there. And it's the same for whoever is listening to this. Your love for your kids are there, and you are the parent that you were meant to be for them. So again, when you go through the waters, they may feel really difficult to swim through, but you're not alone. There's always someone that's going to help walk you or swim through that.
Mhm.
So, and the last thing that I would probably say is thank you for allowing me to share my story. It's not often that I get to do this,
Mhm.
but I really hope that if I can just help one life, one mom,
Mhm.
stay afloat and understand. And then on the other side, when she goes through all of the difficulty, say, I
Mhm.
did it. And I did it for herself. She did it for herself, but also for the love that she has for her kids.
Yes, definitely. And you're welcome. Thank you. I appreciate you coming on and sharing your story, and not just sharing your story to say, hey, we all go through this, but that there is another side and that
Mhm.
it is possible to get through that. So
Thank you.
thank you.